Hi there, welcome to Recovering Boldly with Quest Center. I'm Courtney, your host, and this is a space where we tell stories of resilience, healing, and transformation. Each episode, we talk to inspiring guests who share their journeys navigating mental health challenges, addiction, chronic pain, and more, offering honest insight and celebrating the courage that it takes to reclaim hope and live boldly as your authentic self. A bit of background on Quest Center. Quest is a nonprofit health center based in Portland, Oregon, with a mission to provide integrative healthcare services, community, and education to all people seeking a wellness focused approach to living and dying. Our programs in HIV services, substance use recovery, chronic pain management, mental health, acupuncture, and holistic medical care all recognize that each person has a unique journey to healing. And in addition to offerings like individual and group therapy, our programs all take an integrative approach to wellness. So they include elements such as peer support, acupuncture, wellness movement, nutrition, and of course, at the heart of it all, community. If you would like to learn more about any of our services, you can visit our website at www.quest-center.org. I'm very excited to welcome our guest, Ronda, to the podcast today. Ronda is an addictions counselor here at Quest. I do just want to mention that this episode contains mature themes, including mentions of sexual assault, suicide, and drug use. Please take care and take the time that you need. Your well-being matters. I'll leave some resources in the show notes. And please note that the views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast and the host of this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Quest Center as an organization. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ronda.
Okay, yeah. My name is Ronda Miller Jaramillo. I'm a substance use counselor for the FSR program and the TRI program. Uh, I've been here for a little over a year. October will be 2 years.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
Yeah.
I was like, am I right in thinking it's been about 2 years?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. Technically, it's been a little bit longer than that, but it started out kind of at a CRM and then
Uh-huh.
had to some life-changing things happen, and then I had to leave for a little while, and
Yeah.
then I came back as a counselor. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you've been a great addition to the team. So, what are you from Portland?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Portland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience growing up.
Uh, I grew up, my mom and dad were divorced, but my dad was always around. My mom worked for Consolidated Freeway. My dad worked for Multnomah County Juvenile Justice for 30 years.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like over there doing that. And I got like two brothers and a sister. My older brother worked over at the detention center for 30 years until he retired.
Wow. So yeah,
I'm on my age right now.
you were kind of around the justice system since you were born, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
What
I
was
went to private school,
okay.
Played basketball,
Nice. I recently started playing a lot of horse. I'm really bad at actual basketball, but
yeah,
I love horse. Yeah.
yeah, I like that. It's better when you come up with a different name for it. So you kind
Yeah.
of control how many letters. But
Exactly.
yeah, grew up athletic, I don't know, close to my dad, not so close to my mom, really, but I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah. Did you split time between both parents?
Yeah, my dad came and got a separate weekend.
Yeah.
Like, so it was always, I learned from my parents that even though you're not together, you could still raise kids, together and, do it as a unit. Even though my dad got remarried and had another kid, that's my little brother. He's my little brother. He's my half brother, I refer to my stepmom as mom,
Yeah.
just watching that whole, relationship with all of them, kind of gives you a different perspective on, how it takes a village to raise a kid. You know, sometimes I was closer to my dad though than I
Yeah.
was.
What part of Portland did you grow up in?
North Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
I'm curious to ask you, I mean, Portland is like historically, obviously such a white city.
mhm.
Do you feel like that was something that you were aware of growing up or like felt played a role in your life?
You want to know something crazy about that? It's like I said, I went to private school, right? Me and my brother and my sister, when we were younger, uh, we all went to Holy Redeemer. There was always just a handful
Uh-huh.
of Black students, you know. And some of us, as we got older and went on to high school, I went to Grant for a year. Coach talked my parents into letting me come there to play basketball until like maybe two of the other females that I went to grade school with went to Grant. We all kind of split up. There's like maybe six of us
Yeah.
throughout first through eighth grade.
Wow.
Yeah. When I go to Central,
Uh-huh.
I was the only Black girl in my graduating class.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it really didn't faze me because I grew up
In Portland.
in Portland.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't, so when I went to Grant, it was a bit of a culture shock because there was more diversity there, but it didn't really bother me. It didn't throw me off. My mom, you know, my mom had white friends and Black friends. My stepmom was white. So, you know, my family is very diverse in culture. So
felt very integrated.
yeah, so it didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I didn't really, it wasn't until I got to New York when I was the culture shock. And I was like, you guys don't know white people here? Where are
Yeah.
I was like, it's too much.
Wait a second.
This is too much.
Yeah. When were you in New York?
Early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, early 90s. So I was in the music industry and I went there in search of a record deal.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Tell me about this music career.
So started here.
Uh-huh.
It started here. And you know, it's funny though, because a friend of mine back when we used to perform around town, you know, and stuff like that. And there weren't too many female rappers that, you know, were even halfway decent to look at. You know, we were cute. So, you know, so we went around and, you know, performed at different places only because, you know, it was something new. You know, they were like, oh, yeah, female rappers, you know. And at first I was like singing, you know, I sing in church. My grandfather was a reverend. He had his own church. And yeah, I used to sing in church and, you know, and stuff like that. And then in WA, I came out with the album and I said, you can cuss on a record? I want to cuss. It's expressive.
Sign me up.
You know, and so I had always written poetry and stuff like that. And I had a cousin who was in the music industry in New York. And he was like, you should come out to New York because I tried California and I tried Seattle. He's like, I don't want to be in the, you know, Northwest. I got to leave here.
Yeah,
to go
see
do
something
it,
new.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I went to New York and met up with my cousin's boyfriend's cousin and his cousins and ended up doing some music for me. And they were like, yeah, she's got it, you know. And they were like, yeah, let's do a demo and let's do this and then we'll present it and let's see what we got, what happens. And I think I was in New York for like, I was in New York for 3 months.
Okay.
I landed a major recording deal.
Whoa.
With Motown.
Wow.
Actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, with Motown for a single on a compilation that I did with Untouchable Records. And we did this compilation. So I landed a song on that album through Motown. And then during a showcase, I performed that song that's on there, Let's Bounce Tonight. And LaFace happened to be at the showcase.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then they were like, yeah, we want to sign her. Yeah, let's sign her. And I was like, okay.
How old were you at this point?
I think in my early 20s.
Yeah. Very fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My early 20s. Yeah.
And was this kind of your first experience living on your own too?
No, it wasn't. I had at the time I had my two oldest kids.
Okay.
They were 4 and 1.
Okay.
At the time. Are they 4 and 1? Yeah. No, they're 4 and 2. They were 4 and 2 at the time. And I remember it's this classic story I told my mom. I need you to watch them while I go to New York for a minute. My mom was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I'm gonna go be a star."
Obviously.
But I went out there to go see my cousins too, though, and then it
Mhm.
just happened, it was the plan, but I
Yeah,
only had planned on being in New York for a week.
I see.
And I was
It's
gonna go out
not
there
how
for a
that
week.
turned
That's
out.
not how it turned out.
Yeah.
I get out there,
Mhm.
and I'm like, studio, yeah, yeah, and nobody was like, she can't rap. She looks like a game show host. This blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, give me the mic. So, yeah, so I ended up with that deal. Yeah, 3 months. 3 months after I got to New York.
Mhm.
um, yeah, and just went from there. Landed a modeling contract with USA Models and did a remix with Voice to Men.
Oh well.
Plays on the radio. It's played on the radio. My brother called me, "Is this you?" Yeah, that's me. You know, single played on the radio. Had 3 singles. Remix with Voice to Men, like I said. Been in a whole bunch of magazines and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're good. Like, I am very impressed. I am.
They,
Well, were you also working other jobs at the same time, or you were just solely focusing on music?
yeah, solely focused on music. I didn't have time for anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, they really they were like, yeah. So it was just like all these fashion designers were like, will she wear this? Will she wear this? I mean, like I could literally say that at the time, and it was in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
So um, all the other female rappers that were out then were like butch boys, like
Mhm.
dressed like boys, and and I was just like, I'm a girl,
Yeah.
And so they were like, "Are you a rapper or a singer?" I was like, I'm a me. So I
Threw them
kind of
off.
like, kind of pushed forward that whole you could be feminine and be a
Mhm.
rapper, at the same time. It
Mhm.
doesn't really matter. There was so much politics and all of this other stuff. So if you weren't showing some skin, or if you weren't showing,
Mhm.
I came out right before that whole, and I was like, I don't wear see-through, I don't wear
Mhm.
camo, I don't wear, I'm not doing any of that.
Mhm.
And it was just hard for them to like deal with a female that they couldn't control,
Mhm.
and I was just like, not,
It's not what you're here
not
for.
what I'm here for.
Mhm.
And I think it was, did a video, shot a own video, did a lot of things. And I think the turning point is when they asked me how I felt about not mentioning that I had kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I said, what are you saying? They were like, how do you feel about? Because we could probably get you in the Budweiser circuit at a younger age. So first, you don't want me to, you want me to lie about my age. Where that comes in, you don't want me to mention that I got a 5 and a 3-year-old right now.
Right.
Because that makes me look like I'm like hot ass. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you guys want me to, in my 20, like 23, 24. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not doing that.
And it's way more badass to be a mom and be a rapper.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of your breaking point with it.
I was like, so, uh,
How long were you in New York total?
5 years.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. And then you came back to Portland.
Then I came back to Portland.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I came back to Portland. My brother had a kid. I was married and had a kid. And I was like, I want my kids to be around their cousins. So, yeah, I came back home. I got married to he was my writing partner and stuff out there.
Hmm.
And so we moved back here. And it was a disaster.
Really? How so?
I think I mentioned that me and my mom don't really get along.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a disaster.
Uh-huh.
She wanted me, my mom eventually ended up being a real estate broker.
Okay.
So she had her own real estate company.
Hmm.
And we've just really never gotten along really to that point to where it was like me and my kids, I have all girls, we get along.
Hmm.
And I think that stems a lot from when I was 15, I was attacked by a serial rapist. And my mom was always like, oh, you're not telling me the truth. And so when I lied about that, I thought she'd call me out on it, and she didn't. And so
Really?
she was like, okay, well, just forget about it. Just forget it happened.
Wow.
So not knowing the truth about that led me to not trust,
Uh-huh.
you know, and it's been a big, big issue, like for majority of my life, because we clashed after that for
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
forever. Like my mom right now has Alzheimer's. And so, you know, there was no coming back from, no closure in that, no, we
That's really
just never
hard.
really, really got along, and once
Mm-hmm.
she got sick, I let it go,
Mm-hmm.
but it kept me away for, a
Of
long time,
course. Yeah.
it kept me away from a long time, for a long time. And, that was, that's a big issue. So coming back here from New York is something I really didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm close to my dad, I'm close to close to my little brother and stuff, and it was just a lot of turmoil,
Mm-hmm.
in my
Felt
life.
did it feel like coming back was kind of like like you're facing again all these
Yeah, and there was just
challenges
yeah,
that
and
you
there
had
was
left.
there was no closure or anything, and there was no, me and my mom were constantly at each other, like
Mm-hmm.
constantly, and she'd manipulate and make me feel like shit, and and
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff. And so I took that. It made me closer to my dad, but it also made me a better mom because I knew what I didn't want my kids to go through. I knew what I didn't want to subject my kids to,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so,
Was the person who attacked you someone that you knew personally, or was it just a random
no, I didn't know
person?
him. He's currently serving life, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the horrible part of that story would be freaking,
I mean, sounds like all of it.
well, all of it, except for now you have to remember, I didn't say anything about it. I didn't tell the truth about it because I wanted my mom to call me out on it. So I just let it ride, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
like, forget it. I know what happened. I'm not gonna push that, right? I'll just do what she said. I'll forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So around, let's see, my youngest is 28.
Mm-hmm.
So 25 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I'm laying in bed, and this Montel Williams show comes on about LaDon Stevens, serial rapist in Portland, Oregon, blah 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 blah, and how and how it's got all these women on the show. And then I wake up and I turn and look at the TV, and here's this dude's face. I
Whoa.
freaked out.
Yeah, that's like you're literally waking up into a nightmare.
Yeah, I freaked out. And I'm like, what the hell? And then there, oh yeah, victim number three was anonymous and da 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 was me,
So they're
and
talking about you and
yeah, and
you
how
don't
I
have a
didn't want to,
voice on
yeah,
this.
and I'm just like, whoa. And they were like, yeah, so we couldn't get in touch with her. Yeah, they never reached out. But then come to find out, they reached out to my mom. And
Oh
my
my
mom
gosh.
thinking nothing happened gives the detectives my phone number. So then I get this phone call
Oh,
from his detectives because now
yeah.
he's murdered somebody and they want to go back
Whoa.
and prove, and show how much of a menace to society this dude is. So they reach out to me,
Yeah.
victim number three, to see if I want to testify.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, who is this? You got my number from
Uh-huh. That's shocking.
who? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
Oh, my mom. What is wrong with you? She goes, well, you told me that thing happened. I said, the one time, you are
Yeah.
not out on something. What the hell is wrong with you? She goes, what? And I was like, never. So I had to call my dad.
Uh-huh.
I had to tell my mom and I had to tell my dad
Uh-huh.
because they're like, she's crazy. They're like, she's crazy. She's being crazy again. I'm like, no, I'm not being crazy. You guys just not listening. You're not listening to me. Okay. So I call my dad and I have to tell my dad what really happened.
Yeah.
He freaks out. Tell my mom what really happened. She was like, that did not happen. And I go, no, yeah, I did. This is why. This is the problem. So then my mom owns real estate property.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing something. She goes, I need you to go downtown and file this uh, eviction for whatever. I need you to just go file it for me. Okay. I go downtown, happen to be in the same building these homicide detectives are
Mm-hmm.
in. And I don't know how or why I remembered that. So
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think I saw the plaque on the,
Okay.
as I'm looking, I'm going, that sugar did it.
Hmm.
Homicide. So with it. So I go to the phone and somebody's like, hey, look, give her my name.
Yeah.
I'm down in the lobby. If you guys really want to talk to me, somebody come down here. If not, I'm leaving. I'm not going to sit here
Now's
and
your
wait.
chance. Yeah.
Come to find out, because I don't remember anything about talking to the police. My mom called the police and everything. She did all of that. She was just like, this guy tried to attack my daughter. She just didn't know about the rape, right?
Mm.
So so I go up there and start talking, and they're like, here's your statement from back then. They're like, back then we caught him because of your description. And I'm like, I don't remember talking to you guys.
Wow.
Yeah, you picked him out in a lineup. Liar. Yeah, like I don't.
Really?
Yeah, that goes to show you how trauma,
Yeah.
how you could just, because I was 15.
Click out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can just click out. I was like, they were like, yeah, you don't remember. So they were like, would you testify? And I was like, sure, I guess. Why not?
Yeah.
I guess. Get some clothes.
Yeah.
They're like, so they're asking, this is the first time I've ever had to do this. So they're asking me these questions. And I'm like, they were like, do you remember? And I go, nope. Do you remember identifying him by his white Nikes with the red swoosh and da-da-da? No. They're like, okay, wait a minute. So I'm going to ask you this. When you read it, and I should say, I don't know if that's what I stated or not. I said, but if you guys are telling me that's what happened, I'm telling you, I don't remember.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they're like, okay, well, they were like, okay. So then when we get up there and parents are sitting in court, and they're like, can you tell us what happened? Can you point out on the board where at Woodlawn Park this happened? And I'm like, yeah. So then after a little while, I'm starting to lose it,
Yeah.
And his attorneys are, blah, blah, she's an emotional lady, the recess. And I'm like,
Do you feel
okay.
like anyone prepared you at all to be?
No, I wasn't prepared for that at all.
Yeah.
I felt like they wanted, even though what they were telling me was the truth, I felt like because I didn't remember it was a lie. If
That makes
makes any
sense.
sense. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I feel like you're wanting me to say something I don't remember, so I can't really say, yeah, I know for 100% that I said that when I don't remember. So it makes me feel like I'm lying, but I know I'm not,
Right.
So we take a little recess.
Uh-huh.
And my dad looks at me, he goes, use your voice. And I went, what? He said, use your voice. Okay. Blow my eyes. It's my face. I get up there. This female attorney, she's like, why'd you wait so long? I said, look, let me tell you something. But this is what happened. This is why I waited. This is why I'm saying something now. He doesn't get to have control of my life anymore. I said it once before. You guys caught him. He went out there and he did the same thing. It's not my fault that you couldn't rehabilitate this. They were like, oh, Your Honor. And I said, look, I've watched enough Law and Order to know you're trying to rattle me. And I was like, it's just not gonna work. He said, so I don't know what you guys want from me, but he doesn't get to rule. He doesn't get to dictate how I move. He doesn't get to dictate how I feel. He doesn't get to dictate my relationships with Black men. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask, how has that affected your view of men?
Well, not knowing whether or not I would have remembered what he looked like, I did not date Black guys from here.
Really?
For the longest. Yeah.
You said not remembering what he looked like.
Yeah. Even though I remembered what he looked like when I saw 25 years later, but I already had my kids.
So it was almost like you kind of like blanked out this part of your life.
Yeah, I didn't know whether or not I would have remembered him, remember what he looked like, because I was like, my biggest fear is like to date the guy who sexually assaulted me when I was 15 years old. Come to find out, we went to the same high school.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did not know him.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was weird.
Yeah.
So I was like, nope. Doing it. So if I didn't know you from before that,
right,
or you had to be from somewhere else, and that's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much guys that I dated that were Black. They were either not from here or I knew them from before.
Yeah, like a protection.
Yeah.
Has it affected your trust, you feel like, with
because
random people?
No, not really that. I think I'm more aware and alert. Like I know the look. Like I know the look. I know the behavior. I know that, it's like
You're on guard.
it's like that radar sets off. Like you can't say certain things to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even care if we're dating and you're trying to be cute.
Mm-hmm.
There's just certain things you can't say to me.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. There's certain, it took forever for me to be able to trust, you know, well, if I say, no, I'm not in the mood, are you going to be mad? Or, you go through
Right.
that whole, psychological
Yeah.
freaking torment,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
But yeah, thank you for sharing. It seems like you've really reclaimed that like power in yourself
yeah,
and been able to move through it. So I'm
yeah.
sure it's probably a
It's,
lifelong
yeah. It took a long
process.
time. It took a long time. I think it took at least, it took a long time.
Yeah.
It took a long time for me to get, but I feel like a lot of that contributed to my depression and my anxiety when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
because, they couldn't really explain to me why I would go into these bouts of depression that were like, unexplained.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could just wake up and just be like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just be like, something's wrong with her. She's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not crazy. I was like, am I crazy? Then you start thinking,
Right.
am I crazy?
Yeah.
And then it was like my security blanket, like my grandparents, my grandmother passing away, like things like that, like starting to watch, people close to me, not protect me. Like my ex-husband, he's the one who introduced methamphetamines to me, and
Mm-hmm.
then we divorced and, it was just like, what is this life? I
Mm-hmm.
just, how did I go from all of this,
Mm-hmm.
pursuing my dream, doing all of this stuff, coming back here, getting caught up in this same emotional freaking bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
of being and feeling unprotected
Mm-hmm.
by those who are supposed to, be on the same side as me,
Yeah.
to it just being about me and my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard for me to like
Mm-hmm.
really navigate through,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
was mental health not really talked about at all in your family?
No,
Yeah.
no,
It was
no.
just kind of treated like, oh,
I mean,
you're crazy.
I went to counseling and stuff when I was a kid, but it was so much like it wasn't addressed. It was like she's
Mm-hmm.
rebellious, she's defiant,
Mm-hmm.
she's she doesn't do anything, So me and my mom would fight like cats and dogs. You know what I
Really.
mean? So to the point to where it was like nobody was really addressing the emotional and physical
Mm-hmm.
abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
verbal abuse that I was suffering from, dealing
Mm-hmm.
with my mom. She don't like me. Okay, you don't like me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it, but oh well, so I'm just gonna do what I do.
Yeah.
I wasn't a bad kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know. She just didn't like me,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever the reasons were, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's her hang up. It took
Mm-hmm.
me a long time to be like, that's her hang up,
Yeah.
Does she love me? Yeah, she loves me, but we were just never gonna get along.
Mm-hmm.
I was a daddy's girl, and that probably was the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had my kids. She saw how close me and my kids were. She tried to sabotage that. It was just,
Really.
yeah, it was like a jealousy thing that, I will never, ever know the reason or the cause of it. Because, like I said, my mom has
It's not
Alzheimer's.
rash and it's not
And it's not
right.
rational. Like, I'm like, I was saying to people, my mom's narcissistic. You know what I mean? That's some behavioral shit. And rightfully so. I could reflect now, I can reflect back into
Mm-hmm.
my childhood and I can see the things that triggered her, and it wasn't my fault and it wasn't her fault. It was things that she, that generation
Mm-hmm. Like
never,
her own undealt with
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and so it helps me to know that, okay, she wasn't crazy. She
Right.
wasn't, she wasn't this one, she just didn't know how to deal with. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? She just didn't know how to do certain things.
And for you to be able to recognize that now, you're really like breaking that cycle.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. It would be my brother, we sit back and man, that shit was crazy. And I'm like, bro, I'm the only one who got the shit into the stick back then. You know? He was like, yeah, I'm so dumb, sorry. And I'm like, you know what? Hey, look, but I can't, triumph or tragedy. I wouldn't change anything that's ever happened to me.
Mhm.
It makes me who I am today.
Exactly.
I feel like I'm just, I am who I am, and
You are where you're
build my
meant to be.
character and, it's taught me things,
Yeah. Tell me about your experience with methamphetamines and how that's kind of informed where you are now.
Yeah, I don't think we can talk about any of that. No. Got an indictment coming. Oh. No. So, yeah. So wonder under the bridge. No. So yeah, you know,
Like, did you experiment with anything when you were younger?
no, I didn't start doing drugs until I was in my 40s.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get in trouble with the law until I was 49.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a late bloomer.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a late bloomer. Yeah. And then and I'm also one of those people, like, if I put my mind to it, I'm gonna accomplish that. If I be like, hey, I wonder how that works. So I'm gonna take it apart and I'm gonna look at it, I'm gonna take a picture, and we'll see how it gets back together, and I'm gonna know. Yeah. I'm gonna know how that works.
Through and through.
Yeah, I'm gonna know how that works. So I had a boyfriend at the time. I had a boyfriend when I was like, because it was just saying, a little bit on the weekends, clean the house up, get the kids, suck around. But
just keeping it all together.
Just doing it,
Yes.
Like, wake up, do lunch and cook dinner, and go to work. And so it became this something I did on the weekends, or it was a once in a while thing, and it wasn't really a big issue, It was just like, like having a drink once in a while. And I've never been into that except for when I used to dance. And so the only time I did drink was at work. And so, but I started like, when I got divorced, second time, I got divorced, and I was already in the whole, using a little bit here and there. And then it was like, oh yeah, if I use more on the weekends when the clubs open until 4:30, I could make more money. So then I could work longer, and then I could make more money. And then what I'm saying? And so then I was like workaholic. Now I'm a workaholic. Because I got 3 kids to raise on my own, paying bills and all this other stuff. So it's just like I'm working. And then it's just like,
trying to maintain.
Yeah, trying to maintain it. Then my grandmother dies. So here comes all my mental health. Right. And plus me and my mom still weren't getting along. We're going in like spurts to where it's like we're getting along and then we're not getting along. We're getting along. Yeah. Now I'm divorced again. Mental health is just like, it's like, how do I balance this out? Well, hell, I figured I do this. When I'm doing that, I don't feel this. I don't feel this unbalanced thing. I can just keep going and keep going. So then that became my norm. Yeah. That became my norm. And then, like I said, my grandmother passed away. And then I was devastated. And I was just like, what the hell? And then my grandfather got sick soon after I'm renting this place for my mom. My mom, so I'm not paying my bills really because I'm going through this whole mental, and my mom allows her partner to evict us, me and her grandkids, yeah. Because somebody told her it's a good idea for you to rent to your daughter. Okay.
Maybe think about that before.
Right. So I'm like, okay, so I go stay with my dad. My oldest daughter goes to college, so that's another loss because now my oldest baby is gone, and I'm, don't know how to deal with that. And so my youngest is with her dad, because we just got evicted. And so now I'm doing more. And so I'm working more. So now I have to and I'm staying with my dad. So it's like kind of balancing out a little bit because I'm happy to be there. Yeah. Until I have to find a place for me and my kids. And then, so then it's going and it's going and it's going. And then I'm just like, wow. So then it gets to the point to where my kids are all taken care of and it's just me. And I'm lost. I don't know what to do. So I have this boyfriend who ends up, after, we're together for about a year, committed suicide in jail. Yeah. You like my lifetime story, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's like when it rains, it
yeah.
pours.
I find out 3 days later.
All right, we are going to pause here for now, and we will pick back up with part two coming soon. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned for more. You can support us by leaving us a rating or review, and consider supporting our efforts here at Quest Center with a donation at quest-center.org/contribute. Every little bit makes a difference. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.